closed and leaning in. Hear the roar from below. We're on the edge and running thin. No holding back what we know. Wave your hand into mine. Will we fall? Will we dive into the deep? No going back. Oh, we'll say it's for the best. Breathing so long. This is how it ends. I'll drown in your love. I'll drown in your love.
lay my cards out on the table for you to read, and you look a little longer in my eyes. I left my disguise at the door. You tell yours and I tell mine. Not the stories, but what's inside. Do you ever wonder why I call you once a year? Could this be a borderline? It's not that I wanna stay forever, but being so close makes me wonder. Could this be a borderline? Could this be a borderline? Could this be a borderline? Do you ever wonder why I call you once a year? Could this be a borderline? It's not that I wanna stay forever, but being so close makes me wonder. Could this be a borderline? thinking of you. Even though the night I feel so lonely, even though I'm crying, I'll let you go. Never thought the pain could be so strong, but I won't turn back. I'll let you go. Let you go. Let it 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 go. Let you. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Time goes by and I still wonder why I spend my days thinking of you, thinking of you. Even though the night I feel so lonely, even though I'm crying, I'll let you go. Never thought the pain could be so strong, but I won't turn back. I'll let you go. Let you go. Let it 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 go. Let you. As it flows.
Welcome to the Alita Army channel. This is Radio KAOS, the voice of the Alita Army, episode 70, Methuselyzation, effects on humanity, reproduction, and value of children, a Gundam Battle Angel Alita perspective. Yes, that's a mouthful. Where we discuss all things to do with the movie Alita Battle Angel, the source manga Gundam, and the greatly desired sequels. I'm your host for this episode, Max Stack, and with me are Star Avelion hiding in the background. His mic's muted, so he may not say anything. Yep. He's not going to say anything. Angela should be along shortly. I guess he had to run out and buy some more pineapple pizza or something. And our guests today are Sin of Sanity from the UK.
I have to unmute twice. So.
Oh, fair enough. He's got to press multiple buttons. We've got Jay and Ice Dave hiding somewhere in Eastern North America. How you doing, Jay?
Doing well. Good to be here.
That's good. And we've got Radio KAOS from Ohio. Thanks for joining us, Radio KAOS.
You're most welcome.
So our news guy is not here, so I will suffer through the news in a short moment. But first of all, I just want to. I don't know. He's got to click on the button to actually get in here, though. He can't talk to us through Twitter. Jaya, what have you been up to lately?
The same old, same old. Actually, now that I'm here, I would like to promote something since I just finished reading a manga. It's actually available on Manga Plus, which is Shueisha's official website. So this isn't something from another third party. This is actually from the publisher itself. And the manga is called Soloist in a Cage. And it's only 20 chapters. They show all 20 chapters. And it's a wonderful, wonderful comic. So if anybody is looking for something interesting to read, it's really nice. It's about an adventure of a young girl going through a dystopian society, which is extremely dark, and it's extremely warm in emotion. And so if you're interested in that sort of story, which Alita is like, then I think that will be a great one to read. So a little bit of promotion.
I think I just found it. I'm just going to present it so people know what they're looking at. So can you guys see that there now? It doesn't actually show it to me for some reason.
It's showing for me.
We've got a tiny little square. I wonder how I can adjust that. Possibly can't. That would be. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So that's the one.
Yep. Soloist in a Cage. It's beautiful art. It's a little bit different from standard manga art, but I think it's wonderful. And it's about. I won't spoil it because it's definitely one that you should read. And the first chapter is so impactful. I won't even go into that. You have to read it to really experience it. But it's about a young girl. You could think about it as a personality of Heidi, who has the fighting skills of Hannah, if you ever saw Hannah. And it's in an environment that's similar to Escape from New York, if you remember the Snake Plissken story. And so if you can think of Heidi running around in Escape from New York with extremely strong fighting skills, then that might give you some idea of what the premise is. But the story itself is really, really good.
See any Panzer Kunst moves in there?
No, but she can take care of herself quite well. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And the first chapter will really set up the tone. The second chapter sets up the plot. And it really works well. I really enjoyed this one a lot.
Oh, cool. I've been watching through a certain magical index, certain scientific railgun, and I've got a certain scientific accelerator to go. So
I've never read that one.
You must be very certain of yourself.
Yeah, railgun is awesome.
I hear that it's really good.
Yeah, I have to unmute everybody on YouTube. Me too. Yeah, I love Railgun. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I got to say the railgun's better than Index because Index is annoying as hell. That character is less. Oh. And the way the main character of that one, Kamajo, interacts with her just annoys the hell out of me. But the main character of Railgun, who is Railgun herself, she's pretty cool.
BDBD is supposed to be pretty funny.
Yeah, I think they just take too much of a lighthearted angle with Index, and it gets a bit annoying after a while.
Anyway, sorry to derail the subject.
That's all right. It gave Angelus time to get here. How you doing, Angelus?
Good. Am I still coming through? Okay?
Hello.
Yep, can hear you.
All right, excellent.
Are you all stocked up on pineapple pizza now, ready to go?
And coffee, the food and drink of the gods, and certain full replacement cyborgs.
Dear, you wish. Anyway, so anybody else doing anything interesting that we can just touch on quickly before we get on to the news?
Gundam Earth Project.
What is that?
Yeah, using Minecraft to recreate the entire planet Earth as it's shown in Gundam or Battle Angel Alita.
That's a lot of blocks.
Indeed, it is. It's on the Discord. There's a Minecraft group on the Discord for anyone who wants to try and join it.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
You should drop that link somewhere that we can post it up for you.
So are they building Iron City in Salem?
Yeah, that's what we're working on right now.
That sounds incredible.
I'll get a link. I'll be right back.
What about the KAOS truck? Is it going to be buzzing around in the Badlands?
We need to figure out the code for that. Boxer. So far, it's just Boxer and I on the Discord, and we don't know all the coding syntax yet. If other people know more coding in Minecraft, that would be cool.
So if any of you guys out there in the chat actually know Minecraft and know the way to get this stuff done, give KAOS a hand.
I'll put up a link for the realm because it's a server I'm hosting.
Sure thing. If you drop it into the Meet chat, then Star can translate it to the chat for the YouTube. Anything else that anybody else wants to throw out there before we do the news? Sinner Sanity, you got anything going on?
Not really.
Well, you got this going on, but other than that, Angelus is eating probably. Staravellian, have you got anything that you'd like to throw in there? Well, what you been up to lately? Anything that the listeners might be interested in? Fair enough. Well, I got 3 new sleep shirts, all, of course, Alita, because naturally that's what it would be.
What shirts are?
Sleep shirts. The ones I wear to bed, like long sleeve ones for winter. So.
Oh, okay.
One of them has Alita playing a harmonica, a la on the train.
Great one.
Yeah, it's not a really it's not a manga panel per se. It's sort of like an artied up version, and she's got red war paint, and it's on a black background, so it's white on a black background, trying to remember what the other one was. I had one for a couple of years that was from the movie, and I replicated that again. And
you should show them off and take pictures of it.
Yes, I should have done that. But the house is like covered in dust. Like every day I vacuum and it's covered in dust because of this kitchen renovation. So, sorry, bathroom renovation. So I did the kitchen renovation years ago. Okay, so what else? Oh yeah, I actually had a second edition of one of the volumes of the original series because I couldn't find a first edition when it came out originally, and I just managed to pick up the first edition. It's a little bit beat up, but now I've got the full set in the first edition, so that's nice.
It adds character when it's got a bit of wear and tear.
Well, the difference is that, it's a smaller form factor, the second edition, so it looks weird on the shelf. Like it's like one size and then it gets smaller and then it gets bigger again. I'm like, ah! So my OCD kicked in and I had to finally get the...
Yeah, I feel what you mean.
It was like there was one available that I could find on eBay in the world, and I'd looked previously and there weren't any, so I was probably very lucky about that. Well, have I given you enough time to get the news organised, Angelus?
Yeah, it's pretty sparse. There's not a whole lot to report on, just a few tidbits that people might go ooh and over. But otherwise, it's pretty quiet on the news front. In fact, would I just have to hit this present now button to show the...
That will show your screen. Staravellium may have to flick a few switches to make it show properly. We had a little issue with that earlier.
That's right. All right. Let me know when it's coming up.
It's up.
Yeah, excellent. Well, in other news around the world, in the land of beer and pretzels, Alita is finally coming to Disney Plus in Germany. I'm sure some of you might have already seen the tweet, but knowing how Disney in general like to drag their heels, especially when it comes to Alita, and I'm sure some of you might have comments on that as well. It's good to see that they're finally sort of, you know, picking up one foot and put it in front of the other when it comes to this.
It's very weird that when they were doing that investor thingy last December, they showed Alita in the lineup, and then they've been so slack about it.
Well, it's like in any sort of news, like when it might be released. I mean, you think at the very least maybe they might have like a sci-fi section of like the list of movies, or maybe they might divide it up into various studios that they've amalgamated under the Disney banner. But yeah, like there've been a few other movies that I know that have been like, for example, under the 20th Century logo that they've talked about and that they've released, but nothing mentioned about Alita. You know, even other streaming platforms from another angle, they've come out and say, oh, look, we've got Alita, but nothing from Disney Plus. And I can't remember the conditions behind it, but, you know, I can't remember any big fanfare at all when Disney Plus finally, when the Alita finally came to Disney Plus here in Australia, at least anyway. But yes, it's definitely coming in, like it's starting to spread its wings, so that's always good news. Speaking of other international news, I have no idea what this says, but the reason why I put, excuse me, the reason I bring this particular tweet up is because it's basically Alita's being discussed, like, you know, we are a worldwide fandom, but the fact that Alita is being discussed in practically every corner of the world, it just goes to show how far-reaching this so-called, you know, box office flop, according to the critics, that the fan base have been talking about for so long as well.
If you click on that actual thread rather than so click on the first one, go back to the first one, click on it. Then you'll have a little button at the bottom that says translate. Translate.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
But
Well, that's nice to see.
But yeah, and I just thought that's like a nice little bit of a pick me up. Translate from Indonesia, where my parents migrated from anyway.
Well, Indonesia has had Alita on streaming on Disney Plus Star, I think they call it down there, which is the old Fox streaming service through that area. So India and Indonesia has had Alita to stream there for quite some time now, maybe a year and a half. So they've actually got better access to it than a lot of the world.
Going through all these, it seems like the fan base goes beyond the just the movie as well, like the manga and possibly the anime as well. Sci-fi in general, because I can see Chappie's being brought up. Jim Cameron's mentioned. Wow. It warms my heart. Next on the agenda, our resident journalist on the ground, Charlie Schmidt. You know, I'm sure you've all seen him, you all follow him, so you all sort of keep up with his own news reports, if you will. but again, this particular tweet I thought was it's not rehashing the whole Captain Marvel versus Alita the issue from way back when, but the fact that
even a thing.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't
He
hate
just
it,
dropped-
but I didn't like it. The Captain Marvel movie, that is. It's like
I don't
it's
have
like-
a bone. Didn't see one. Didn't see it. So.
Captain Marvel was not that great. It was okay. It was not that great. It had actually a good premise. It just didn't execute it well, in my mind.
Yeah, but essentially, what this tweet goes over is the fact that from a purely streaming perspective, Captain Marvel was in the top 10 in various countries, like in only what I think he said 34 countries around the world, as listed here. But Alita was like, was it 63? So was it? Oh wow, that's nearly double. And as I'm sure you've been, all of you have been keeping up with his various tweets, she's been in those top 10 lists for anywhere between a few weeks to a few months.
Wow, that's impressive.
And well, yeah, I mean that's just his first 31 there. Oh, there's us.
It's impressive, but it shouldn't come as a surprise to us.
Of course. Oh, and it's even got listed here, like in Australia, it was like in the top 10 for 5 days. In Belarus, it was in the top 10 for 16, and it just goes on. It's good to see. So 63, wow.
Always seems to be just after news breaks that starts streaming, huh?
I think so, and even with that, go on.
I think it's just people who didn't watch it in cinema. It's just a lot of the audience haven't.
Oh, definitely agree. I mean, and without sort of, how should I put it, like talking the fandom up, it's partially because of the fandom. I was going to say us, but I mean, we're all hunter warriors, but like because we've been so vigilant in pushing Alita, in keeping her name just being mentioned in various circles on Twitter, on Facebook. I'd imagine once it does pop up on a various streaming service on a random country somewhere, people look at it and say, well, I see this mentioned on Twitter or on social media in general. I wonder what this is about. They go watch it, they fall in love with it, and hence we get all those, why the hell did I sleep on this property until now? And then you get the rare few that's like, kicking themselves because they didn't watch it in the cinema.
It's also the articles slamming the film as well, because people hear it through that and then they get curious. So any attention becomes good attention.
Amen to that, brother.
Well, we have converted hearts and minds on Twitter. We've had a few people who've seen our passion and gone, well, I'm going to have to check this out. You guys are like crazy about this thing, so there must be something to it.
Amen. And last piece of news, and I thought this might, from the art world, is, I'll translate a tweet. This particular account received a gift from his daughter for his birthday, and it was a painting of Alita on a piece of glass. Now, we all know artists like Cran Jam and UFO Virus, or Rotten, as you know her on Twitter. They're like next level sort of hand-drawn artists. We've even seen various digital artists in Paul Entitled. I can't remember the names, but I've seen even people doing like those little needle and thread sort of designs of Alita, but this is something else. And I pray that isn't blood, but probably more the painting from the war paint, if you will.
It's not blood, but it's blood.
What you've got to realize when you paint on the other side of the glass is you've got to start from the highlights and work your way down rather than start from the base colors and work your way up. So it's a reverse artwork as well. So this is pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, now that I sort of read it in a little bit more detail, here it says the special thing is it's not painted on the glass itself, but on the back and in many layers. So it's much like what you just said, yeah. You start from the highlights and work your way down.
Yeah,
but I thought that was just gorgeous.
Complete reverse of what I usually taught that way.
I wonder what it makes you think what it'd look like if you know, how you see your stained glass windows in churches and various other buildings, on how that would look like if you like held it up to a light or
you're wandering into cult area there, Angelus. Be careful.
I make no apologies.
We need the church.
I can imagine what you're talking about. Some stained glass with a leader, and it would look awesome.
But yeah, that's just incredible. And that's it for the news today. Like I said, it's a little bit light. Couldn't really find any articles, but you know, we all knew we were in it for the long haul.
Clearly, your memory is better than mine. Did we cover the whole Switcho Chango that Channel 7 in Australia did, advertising Alita, and then
no, we did.
The Martian?
Channel 7, you're probably not listening, but I've got a bone to pick with you.
Yeah. Oh, the sons of bitches. So the background is that I think it was Dizzy Beast spotted that Channel 7 had in their free-to-air lineup Alita Battle Angel as showing on, prime time on Saturday night last week. And everyone was getting excited. Oh, it's going to be on prime time in Australia. Rah, rah, rah. Lots of people will see it, a few million people. And they put The Martian on instead. And I don't know how or exactly how that came about and when it swapped over or what have you, but there was a lot of confusion. Like, I went to watch it, to give it another tick along, and it wasn't there. It was The Martian. So they put a Martian on, but not the right one.
Yeah, and like, I've got all the pictures on my phone as like backup saved, but I think it was like early on in the week, around the Monday or Tuesday, that either Dizzy or someone brought it to my attention, and I'm thinking, right, I'll look it up just to sort of like back up what they're saying and reference it. And yes, it was true. I looked up our my state's TV guide online and took a screenshot, and Alita Battle Angel on 2 channels at 7:30 p.m. And I think about 1 hour before it was meant to air, might have even been Vladi or someone that I'm like I converse with quite regularly, said, "Is it still on? Is it going on?" Like, just asking questions about it. And I'm thinking, oh shit, that's right. I'll just double check that. Maybe I can stream it on my phone, and just who cares about the download limit. But yeah, and that's when I discovered that The Martian was on, and I'm thinking, what? I started exploding after that. Was not happy, Jan.
No. And, they don't give any explanation. It's just magically just different.
And just to add a little bit more context, it's not something that usually happens. When, like, maybe they might make some last minute changes in the like a week or so in advance, but not like it would have been mere days before they changed it over, because I think a few days after it got my attention, I double checked, but didn't take a screenshot of it. It was still there, like on the Wednesday or the Thursday. And I remember this because I thought, all right, Alita's going to be on tomorrow, aka Friday. And then someone reminded me, wait, no, you got your times mixed up. It's actually on Saturday, etc. Like, all right, whatever. And yeah, so it's not very usual that they change it that quickly, I guess. I wonder if it has anything to do with like licensing and streaming services and whatnot.
Yeah, I'd like to know the background behind it. Maybe they thought they were getting it and there was a mix-up with, licensing. It's about all I can think of, really.
But yes, again, that's it for the social media news anyway. Wasn't any articles that I could find, not any decent ones that we could have gone over from the long distant past. But
I guess the article writers are all off for the summer on holidays.
But just remember, guys, before I sign off and hand it back over to MaxTag, it took, 10 years or maybe even a little bit longer before we got the first movie from announcement to release. And yeah, I mean, hopefully we don't have to wait that long.
He's wanted it for about 15 years, hasn't he?
15. Wait, so would it be?
It was waiting for the technology.
Yeah, it's not like exactly from the announcement, but from when he says he actually wanted it.
Yes, okay. But he said at the time they didn't really have the technology to pull off the special effects.
Well, the interesting thing was that later Calogridis said that James Cameron always wanted to have Alita as a digital character. So he had that in his head from the get-go. And as you said, he had to develop the technology to make that happen.
Right. I mean, there were some films that did full CGI characters, such as the Watchmen film with Dr. Manhattan, but that was 2009, I believe.
Oh God!
It was around the same time as Avatar, which was lots of digital characters.
Yeah, but the Dr. Manhattan special effect was more detailed than Gollum was, resolution wise.
When was Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Because that's a lot earlier than
that was like 1989 maybe, or early 1990s.
But that was cartoon. Yeah. Like they weren't trying that hard.
Yeah. Yeah, even that was really hard.
It was comedy, yeah.
Yeah, even that was really hard to do for a whole film, though.
Well, Bob Hoskins had this interview where he just explained that you have to close your fingers because it's a real pain, because they actually had to manually take the frame paint into the film for the animation. So they would have to precisely paint between your fingers if you had your fingers open.
Wow. But
so he needed almost a dozen retakes on a part in the film where he grabs Roger Rabbit by the neck, because he opened his fingers when he was grabbing him, so they had to draw the white in between his fingers.
Well, in any case, like I said, hopefully we won't have to wait that long because the technology is there at least anyway. And it's not like it really did a nosedive in terms of how much money it made. Even the executive producer said that it was in the gray zone as a worst case scenario of profitability. So, it's up to us to, keep on hammering it day to day. Keep doing what you're doing, Elite Army.
Well, later said that it made its money. It's in the black, so we've heard it from two sources now. So I'm quietly confident that it's not a profitability thing. It's more James Cameron is exhausted his line of credit and he doesn't get any more until he makes some money back for them.
Yeah, true. But that's it for the news. Back over to the anchor man, Max.
roll on Christmas 2022, where we all get to go to see Avatar 2 lots of times and make it smash the billion, and then we should see something. That is my expectation. So, not movie this week, or at least not the one that we've seen. One of the future ones this may come up in, but topic this week is Methuselyzation. So, Methuselah was a character in the Bible that lived for a very long time, so that's why they've used his name in the naming of this process. Now, just to give you a baseline, if you haven't read the manga into Last Order, but basically it's a technology that's used on people's bodies to stop cellular aging. So basically, when you have a treatment on you, you stop aging, and unless you die by misadventure, you should be able to live theoretically forever. I mean, obviously, if you chop a limb off or something like that, they can actually reprint it. They have technology to reprint limbs and things. Aga Mbadi, who is one of the major bad guys in Last Order, if you haven't read it, but I'm sure that most people here have.
Except Bloody.
Except for Bloody.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time getting his bits put back together after Alita broke them off. But so in combination with bioprinting to replace organs and limbs, and the treatment of Methuselyzation, theoretically you should be able to live pretty much forever, unless you get caught in a black hole or some other major disaster that prevents recovery. In fact,
or if you get left in a vacuum.
Well, that wouldn't help. No, I mean, you have to have the right environment for life support. But
well, you need matter.
Yes, you do. This topic has been hotly debated, actually, on Cranberry's Discord. There's been quite a bit of discussion about this around the basis of what it means to be immortal. So that was quite interesting. I might draw from that a little bit as we go on. But the upshot is, when you have people who don't age, it's going to have big effects on society and the economy. So that's sort of like where this discussion is pointed. Does anybody have any comments that I'd like to lead off with, or should I just?
Actually, yes, I do, and
there we go.
It'll probably lead into other conversations, but prior to this stream, I was talking to Maxi about what Methuselyzation actually is, and just been racking my brain, like in topic points to discuss. It made me think of a particular scene in what was it? Troy, the one that stars Brad Pitt and Orlando Bloom. And Achilles is mentioning the difference between gods and men. And one line that always resonated with me, I won't say it word for word because, I just get so enamored by that particular scene. But he essentially says that everything is more beautiful because we are doomed. Like all the food tastes better, all the paintings and views, art, everything looks more beautiful because we don't know when we'll be able to see it again. We won't be around to see it again in whatever their lifespan is, 50, 60, 100 years, or several hundred years in the case of some biblical figures anyway. And that made me think, there was a similar comparison that and it mentioned in this particular scene as well, that the gods were actually jealous of mortals because of the fact that, because of that very reason, the reason why that, they seem to be more happy because they enjoy everything more. Like I said, food, art, love other people's company, stuff like that. Whereas the gods are like so, I don't know, flippant, so uncaring. And I mean, if you guys have any other opinions on that, then by all
I could
means,
say you could argue that they're arrogant.
arrogant even, yes. And yeah, so when I was thinking about topic points, it made me think of that scene, and I'm thinking, at least for me anyway, I probably wouldn't want to live forever, because then might lead into other areas of like, why would you want to pass on your knowledge to others when you can just keep it for yourself and then continually to improve yourself, because you will be around. Even if we were to go to a completely different IP, and I won't let this derail the topic, but
Well, no,
Uh,
immortality is something that's common in science fiction. It could be Watchmen, it could be The Watchmen by DC Comics. It could even be a kids' film like Hook.
Yeah, you see it in a lot of. I mean, Star Trek, for example, had it with the Q, and the Q exactly was the same comment, right? They got so bored of existence that they started doing whatever they can to create anything that will make them feel interested, which is exactly what, to some extent, what Vector says, not Vector, Nova says in the movie, right? If you live forever, you eventually start living to watch other people die, and all these things.
It's the jealousy thing again.
Yeah, and it's kind of like eventually you may lose purpose of what's going on. You see it in many vampire stories, like the Anne Rice novels, where they eventually will kill themselves because they find that eventually they don't even remember why they should be existing. And so it is interesting to be able to live forever versus having to live forever. Maybe a difference. If you were able to live forever, would you eventually end yourself, because eventually it just loses its purpose to exist?
Well, I would say that the human experience is defined by change. So you're a child, then you grow into a teen, then you become an adult, you do the adulty things, you have kids, or you explore the world, or you do whatever, and you learn and you grow, and then you start to decline, and you get wisdom, but it's a bit late. And the whole process has a beginning and an end and a flow through, and basically at any point where you say, okay, I'm not going to change anymore, that whole thing about life is interrupted. Sure, you get a lot more time, but if you're the only one that gets the time, as has been mentioned in the chat, all your friends will grow old and die, and you'll still be hanging around. You look at movies like what was it called? Highlander.
Yes.
He went through that whole thing where he fell in love and he lived with this woman. She grew old and died, and he was left there, and he'd done it 2 or 3 times. And then he's just sort of like, I don't want to make relationships anymore because it's too painful to watch them grow old and die. And, that you basically take yourself out of life and become a static thing. And if other people around you are all doing the same thing, then you've got company. But in general, that flow of life is stopped, and you're no longer a human as we evolved to be. You've taken yourself out of that, and it's in so many different things. Like there's the perpetuals in 40K. There's the Empress in Jupiter Ascending, which basically in Jupiter Ascending, the substance of the plot was that humans have been seeded across the galaxy by this race, and the sole purpose of them existing is to build up to a certain population level, and they get harvested, and a very small amount of material is taken from their bodies, which then creates an elixir of immortality for the Empress. And the whole juxtaposition is that Earth is up for being harvested. So it's like, oh shit. So yeah, I mean, what's the price of this immortality, and who gets to be immortal? But it's not just, you know, deciding who gets to be immortal, taking yourself out of the timeline. It's also if this was a common thing and lots of people got to do it. And I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, Jaya or Chaos or Sin, if you know differently, but my understanding was that the secret of Methuselyzation was leaked.
It was.
So, you know, it was well known. Anybody who could afford to have it done could have it done. And then,
those who aren't in the scrapyard, sure.
Yeah. I mean, you had to have a bit of money.
But the other things too was there were people who were exceptions. Like, for instance, when Embody finds out that Cerula is not, she's actually part of a genetic impurity as a mutant type, and she's not a Methuselized person. That's where he really flips out. It's like, how did you get up here?
Well, part of it, the way Embody was using it was almost like a gift to people. He offered it to Queen Limera when he started falling for her, and she was the one that refused because she thought that you didn't value life unless you had known that it was going to eventually end. Then by knowing that your life was limited and finite, and it really gave you a chance to actually learn to live during the times that you had.
Well, I've got no problem with extending lives, but you shouldn't just like freeze the process. That's where the problems come in. And I would bring up if life extension or immortality was widespread, then the whole fabric of the economy would change. Because if you think about it,
you're selling adults, all adults.
Yeah. But in Western society, you have, you know, you grow up in a household usually, and then you go out on your own and you rent an apartment, and then you buy a place and you meet somebody and you have kids, and so you need a bigger place, and then they grow up and move out themselves, and then you downsize, and then you go into an old folks home or whatever. That's sort of one path, but you can see that there's changes of living environment there, which means people buy and sell houses, and that keeps that part of the economy going. But if nobody is getting older, then they buy a place and they could just live there for hundreds of years. There would no reason to change your living environment, especially if, and this is the big bugbear that's come up in the text chat a couple of times, but if you no longer need to pass your genes on to keep them going, because they'll be existing in your body for hundreds or thousands of years, then the value of children completely changes in society. And that was one of the big things that Yakido was sort of showcasing within Last Order, that children no longer had the sort of value they do in society now. They're not our future anymore. We're our future because we don't grow old.
Well, or so they think, because you never know. You never think, just because you think something works and makes you immortal doesn't mean you really are.
You can only think within the boundaries that you're comfortable in. If you try to go beyond too many options, then you're trying to do everything at once, and maybe that's why it can't be done until something threatens your life, and then you try to save it.
I was just about to mention something like this: the stagnation of the people who go for it, and the fact that the children just become a drain on resources.
Well, it's basically increasing population number without any sort of breaks if you keep having children.
The problem is that having children would increase the population even more, because the counterweight to people being born is people dying.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's the whole point with children losing their value, because of the fact that it becomes, as Sin was saying, that it becomes a burden rather than a resource, right? Because everybody is living forever. The more children come, the more you have to share with everything else. And if the Great War in the comic is with regards to resources and the sharing of resources, then the more people there are, you would think that that would become even a greater burden.
But that kind of also goes into immigration as well. I mean, imagine you bring in a population that doesn't have that operation.
Or if you migrate, using that example, if you migrate to another country that's like that's got what they call a high density population, where like the population per square kilometer or something is a lot higher than normal. Like take Australia for example. Like we probably got a low population density, but like a huge chunk of our land is inhabitable. It's just everything's trying to kill you down here. But
all those spiders.
Isn't a lot of it technically desert too?
Yes.
Yeah, that too.
So arable land in Australia is probably about 30%, maybe 35% of the land mass.
But you'll get like sparse villages here and there, but you will notice all the major cities and whatnot are all along the coastlines. Like, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. Across the other side, you got Perth. They're all along the coastlines.
Yeah, there is only one capital that's not on the coast, and that's Canberra, and that was artificially created. So,
but so yeah, I mean, tying it back into the stream, it would be a drain on resources, and depending on your I guess for lack of a better term, what kind of immortality is in any particular story. Whether you do naturally live forever, or you just simply can't die because you just regenerate, or in Nova's terms, your flesh just gets repaired by the nanites. And like I said, you simply can't die, or you make backup copies of yourself, like Mbadi, and if one of your brain chips gets destroyed, then it just transfers all the information to another one. You put that brain chip into another body and bang, there you go. You're alive again still. So you're never really dead. And the resources they even maintain that technology.
Just mentioned something like altered carbon as well. You could even live in storage for hundreds of years. In altered carbon, can't you? Just like
seen altered carbon yet.
Or
later wrote the screenplay.
Yes, she did.
Might have to check it out. I feel kind of embarrassed. I haven't seen it yet.
I've only seen like about halfway through the second season. Apparently you could just have the chips in the neck. You could just store them for like decades, and once you find a usable body, you could just put them in, and it's like they were awake yesterday.
Also, say what you will about the game, but in Cyberpunk 2077, they had a similar premise. In they had brain chips where they'd store all your memories, your brain functions, etc., onto this biochip, and they digitally store your soul into this chip. So if your main body dies, it transfers the chip, you take it out, put it into another body, and again, same premise as the MIB chips in Alita.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was about to say.
There's also it's a much older novel. There's John Carter of Mars, where he's like either sleeping or dead on Earth, and has a projected body of himself on Mars.
No, I think it's always.
I've seen the movie.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I've seen the movie, but I haven't read the book. So please talk more about it, because I know very little about it beyond that.
Okay. Funny thing is, like, so basically, John Carter is basically he's a fugitive on Earth. Shortly after the American Civil War, he finds some treasure, and he faints. And when he's unconscious, he wakes up on this weird world, and he seems to notice the gravity's weaker. He can jump around, run really fast, jump extra hard.
So yeah, similar to the movie.
Kind of a reverse Superman effect.
Yeah. But I don't know if I'm gonna.
Well, you won't be spoiling it because we did have a stream.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it a lot.
That and Chronicles of Riddick, I believe. With,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that I'd call that immortality. That's more like body transference. He wasn't effectively immortal, but his body was in stasis in one place and he was living in another place. So I suppose you could call it a form of immortality in that he could go back to his body and it was just the way it was when he left. But I don't know that's a functional immortality. Like he was there, his body was lying there for a few, I don't know, it was months or something before he came back to it, and he was very stiff and sore. But whether that would, last into years or decades without his body, being irreparably shut down from lack of use would be a question for the writer who's dead, so we can't really ask him.
Yeah, it's always, all of these things with regards to immortality, and that comes back to a question that's even more basic, and the standard will be what is life for, or the better way of saying it is what is existence. And you see it in a macroscopic way, which is what happens to the economy, what happens to people, what happens to culture, but you also see it in a microscopic way where you see it in a person and what is existence. I like the one that Angelus brought out, which was that you could put the entire memory and existence into a microchip. And so let's say within a fraction of a second or 2 seconds, the person can experience their entire lifespan, in which case they can create multiple lifespans of going hundreds and hundreds of years, but from the existence of the chip, it's only a few minutes, in which case is that immortality, is that existence, what exactly is that? Which one is the reality? Which one is the real life? And then the other, of course, is that the one that I found, which was interesting, was there was this again, sorry, back to manga again, but there's this comic called Blade of the Immortal, and it's basically a samurai where the samurai is basically Logan, right? Wolverine. He's cursed with not being able to die. He can't die. Even if he tries to kill himself, he can't die. And it's about him being Ronin. And you read this entire story, hundreds and hundreds of chapters about this major adventure that he goes through protecting this young girl and having a relationship with her, and eventually having to leave because it's that her life is not exactly in line with his, considering the fact that he lives forever. And about several hundred years later, one of the that girl's grandchildren who received a message from that very girl, when it was a grandmother, finds this guy samurai again and goes up to him and thanks him for taking care of his grandmother. He's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't even remember who this person is, which is really a shock to you, because when you read this entire thing, it was this incredible adventure that the person went through. But now that he's hundreds of years later, he can't even remember who that person is anymore. It's not part of his life. It's not important to him anymore. He's like, okay, thanks for the message. Bye, sort of thing. So it does actually create this situation. Just what is the purpose of you going along? If your whole example is like, I want to explore and see the world. If you live forever and you saw every corner of the whole world, and that's still all where you can travel, would you eventually start saying, okay, what's my purpose anymore in life?
to watch other people die, pretty much.
Yeah, coming back to Nova again.
Exactly. But you bring up another important point, and that is biology. So the human mind is, well, I wouldn't say designed, but it's evolved to live a finite lifespan and then end. And it develops when you're a baby. Like, you can't take in things, you can't cognitize things, you can't think things through, and you learn how to do that, and you're good at it for a while, and then you start to lose your faculties and all that, and you go through to death. And that's the natural order of things. But if you freeze that, how is the brain going to work when you've got hundreds of years of memories that it wasn't designed to hold?
Yeah.
Are you going to have these things where you can only remember back a certain way, and then it's foggy because your brain can't hold those ancient memories anymore? Or will you stop making new memories because your brain's full? I mean, how is that going to work? We've got no way of knowing scientifically what the brain will do if it lasts longer than the use by date. So
it's not so much about the brain being designed today. I think it's more about how much the information the human brain can handle, and I don't think anyone's found out how much there is.
They've estimated. So basically 50 years of life, the audio and visual data, if it was recorded by computer, that'd be 5 petabytes. That's 1,000 terabytes.
Well, the human mind works on a preference principle. So you don't remember. Well, there's the odd person out there who has an eidetic memory who remembers every little thing, and that sort of would suggest that there's a lot more storage than the average human tends to use. But the human brain goes through a selection process of what they remember and what they don't remember. So all the little details, my foot was itchy on Tuesday, it's 15 years ago or whatever, all that data is lost. The brain considers it unimportant, and you just don't remember it. Things have to, have an impact upon your psychology before it gets stored away in long-term storage. And of course, if you're under stress, if you're not sleeping properly, a lot of that long-term storage is just not happening. Like, one of the things about sleep deprivation is that you do not form long-term memories, and you have difficulty remembering that time when you weren't sleeping properly because you're not forming the memories. Yes, that is your problem. That and the pineapple pizza. Those are your two big ones. So
yeah, it's also that memory is a bit biased. Everyone remembers something differently because their brains piece together different parts of the information.
Well, it's point of view, and it's also the fact that when you remember things, especially if they were a long time ago, you're actually it's like taking something out of a box and playing with it and putting it back in the box in the new state after you've played with it. So rather than your memory being perfect, you're now storing away the memory of how you remembered something. So you don't actually keep a memory unsullied. You change it every time you think about it. It's like is a Schrodinger's cat, I think, is the thing where by interacting with the thing you change it.
Yep.
And that's how memories work. My father was a big example of this. He would sit there and think about a situation that happened over and over and over and over again until he modified his memory enough to remember something that he was happy about. Like, if there was a situation that was bothering him, he would think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it. And in doing so, his point of view on it would change slightly. And oftentimes you go to him and you'd say, hey, you remember this thing where this and this and this happened? You go, that's not what happened. It was like this. And I have been trained in science. I sort of listened to him tell me things that when I was involved in, and his point of view on it would change over time because he's thinking about it over and over and over and over again. And it's changing slightly every time he thinks about it till it morphed to a point where I didn't recognize what he was saying because he thought about it so much that he changed his memory about the thing. And that's the mutability of human memory. So imagine if you were doing that over hundreds or thousands of years.
What do I feel like that?
New information can always change that as well, can't it? Because you're thinking about the new information you know and mixing it with the older stuff that actually happened.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it also probably depends upon the mood that you're in, right? I mean, if there's something that you bring up in memory, and whether you're in a good mood or whether you're in a bad mood, you might rewrite that memory in a different way. A cup is half full or a cup is half empty, and then all of a sudden,
Exactly.
that memory starts slowly changing in a different way, and you might exaggerate a few of the good sides or the bad sides depending upon how you feel, and then all of a sudden you start believing something that may not have even happened that way.
Well, that's what I was getting at with my father. He would think about it until he was happy with the memory because it would bug him so much.
What do I feel like that you were describing? Like elements, not the whole thing, but just bits and pieces of elements of what you were saying. Almost describe the fandom in general.
Yeah, no, exactly. What Angela's saying there. You never remember the whole thing.
Oh, look, I've had instances in my life where I've completely forgotten something, like completely. And I don't know how I forgot it because it was kind of important. But, you know, it was 10 years ago and, you know, it had to do with paying a bill and I was upset with Optus because they'd sold me a thing that didn't work properly. It was in the very early days of mobile data. And I'd thrown the thing in the drawer and forgotten about it. And there was an outstanding debt for this thing that kept ticking over monthly. And I paid they have this thing in Australia where you don't have to pay the full thing. You pay like an agreed amount of it when there's a dispute about whether the service was what you wanted or what have you. But, you know, I was young and stupid and just forgot about it. And the debt collectors finally caught up with me and I paid the agreed amount. But what I didn't know was that caused a black mark on my credit rating. And then I went to get a home loan and I couldn't get one because I had a black mark on my credit rating. I'm like, I couldn't even remember that this had happened. I just forgotten about it completely, whether it was because I was so pissed off about it, didn't want to think about it or what have you. But I was reminded about it. I'm going, I don't remember that happening. And then finally the penny dropped and I'm going, oh, shit, yeah, now I remember that. But when it was first brought up, I could not remember it. It just wasn't there. And that's the mutability of memory, that you can completely forget about things that, I mean, some people think about them over and over again until they change. Some people try to forget about things that bug them. I mean, there's all sorts of...
Being a scientist, then let me pose you this question. And again, this is relating back to the topic. If you were immortal, or if you did live for far longer than what you biologically natural would live for, would your biology sort of, what's the word for it, evolve to or adapt to it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, to be immortal, I mean, they talk about, you know, ceasing cellular aging. So cells have a finite number of times that they can divide, because every time they divide, there's you have telomeres, which are the end of your genes, and every time that they divide, you lose one of these telomere ends. So after a while, it starts eating into the actual gene, and then the genes stop working properly, and that basically causes senescence, which senescence is a term which basically says programmed cell death. So once those telomeres are eaten away, then that's why people skin changes and they get old and get all spotty, and because the telomeres are cut down and then the genes aren't replicating properly, and eventually your cells can't replicate anymore and you die. So that's basically cellular aging in a nutshell. And to stop that, like they're talking that maybe in 10 years time we'll have the ability to increase the length of telomeres so cellular aging won't be a thing anymore. So then you've got to rely on, people dying by accident, like having accidents, and people have accidents all the time, but lots of people die of old age as well. But medicine is trying to get to the point, theoretically, I mean, big pharma aside, but medicine is trying to get to the point where they stop you having diseases, stop you aging, stop all these negative things happening to you. And there may come a time where we have the ability to cease cellular aging. There are other ways to die, but at least it'll take that out of the equation.
Well, definitely, Agambad will be interested in the telomere regeneration. But coming back to, again, battling to Alita, is coming back to Methuselyzation and assuming that you could actually regenerate your telomeres. Then there's the situation of would you evolve? And evolution usually comes from the case of requirement, right? If you're perfectly fine in your environment, why do you need to evolve? But of course, if your biological architecture is made so that you could actually correct situations that potentially can kill you, then you may evolve. Let's say you do go to Venus, or you do go someplace where it has different gravity, different atmosphere, whatever, and now all of a sudden something is causing cellular death in your body. It may actually correct itself and change your body to accommodate the new environment if the Methuselyzation is strong enough that it's not just maintaining your body, it's basically going to change and evolve your body based upon whatever is necessary to keep you alive. Then what you may become 100 years later, traveling all over space, may be completely different from what you looked like before.
Well, that would have to be a sort of I wouldn't call it an added extra, but it would have to be another facet. So you can stop cellular aging, but evolution requires generations. And how, unhuman modified evolution works is that you have what's called natural selection. So within any population, there's variations. We don't all look the same. We're not all the same height. We're not all the same musculature. There's a whole bunch of variation within a population. And depending on the selection pressure, which is, as you say, the change in gravity, a change in this, a change in that, a change in environment. If the environment changes, certain people will have an advantage, and those are the ones that get to reproduce because they survive long enough to do so. And once they reproduce, they pass those genes on. So the genes that help them survive will become part of the next generation. But if you take the generation out of it, then there's going to have to be some other method by which humanity changes, because there won't be that ability to have mutation, which causes variation, which then allows you to have a selection process on that. The selection process will be taken out if you get my meaning. Either people will die or they'll live, and there won't be another generation for that to be passed on.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it all depends upon, I think, just how strong that adaptability is in your physiology. The good example of that is, let's take the cybernetic equivalent of that, which is the Imaginos body, which can literally change its structure to whatever is necessary to form what you need. You could even see it in the Berserker body in the movie, in that sense that it'll change its physiology based upon what that host is thinking its body is. So can it get to the point where you could create a cattail? In the case of the comic, yes. Can you create and get to the point where you could create wings if you need to? If you go by the comic, yes. So then can you take the similar sort of mechanics and do it in a biological format, since nanomachines are part of the Methuselyzation equation, and accelerate that evolution, which doesn't require reproduction to do so. You're just evolving within your own body. And if it doesn't work, it'll throw it away and it'll immediately redesign and modify based upon what that is. If your cellular structure can actually change and modify, which is something we can't do currently, and that's why you need next generation to see if that will go along. But if you can modify your cells and change your cells dramatically to create gills, if, for example, you decide to go into the water, create wings if you want to fly in the air, will that create a situation where you could adapt? That all depends upon, again, we're going beyond immortality now. We're talking about adaptability and genetic change.
Right. My concern about immortality is it might create stupidity because people don't have something to fear. You don't tend to engage your intellect as much because you don't feel like you need to solve the problem.
Well, if immortality creates stupidity, then I could definitely brag that I have a very long immortality.
I'm just saying you could. I've seen multiple sci-fi where just the fact that they got so immortal or so long, they just destroyed themselves. You didn't see any threat out there.
Well, that's the other thing. How does living that long affect your psychology when your psychology is built for a finite lifespan? Again, we sort of looked at this with the whole vampires killing themselves because they couldn't stand living any longer. And I mean, that often has to do with, them actually having what's the word I'm looking for? But basically, they care about how many people they're destroying to keep themselves alive, and they can't stand doing that after hundreds of years and killing thousands and thousands of people just to maintain themselves. Some of them off themselves to stop doing that because the cost is too high for their psyche anymore.
Right. I was thinking more along the lines of Krypton from DC Comics. I mean, they've cured their diseases. They live really long lives, and then all of a sudden they end up blowing up their planet. And it's like, well, we haven't feared death in all this time. I mean, we don't even have babies the way people used to. We just program them in. And then it's Walter Rell says, no, we're all doomed. He didn't even want that mentality to be sent with his kid to Earth.
I mean, you have a virtual equivalent of what may happen if you have immortality. Take any role-playing game and play it all the way to the end so that you have everything now. You got everything. You got the godlike power, and you got every weapon, and you got every quest. Now you're just going to keep on playing just to do the stuff that is there. You could continue to play Skyrim, for example, after you finish every quest, and just sit there doing the same things every day, and eventually you probably will quit the game. Well, what if that was life and you're not allowed to quit the game unless you go kill yourself?
Yeah,
or that's what Dr. Manhattan said.
Well, yeah, just saying, what's left there is just mundane, isn't it?
Well, life has a value because there's a limit to it. If there's no longer a limit to it, what is the value of it?
It's worthless.
Well, eventually, yes. I mean, experience is only good a certain number of times. People numb to everything eventually because they've done it so much. There's nothing new. There's no new feeling. There's no new experience. Everything becomes so known and so old that, I mean, I would expect that somebody who's immortal would have to keep moving because they couldn't stay in one spot for hundreds of years. They just get so bored.
Well, that's what Dr. Manhattan said. It just makes sense for me now to just go create planets in life because that's more up to abilities and more up to the scale of the kind of life I live.
Yeah, and if you just out of the comments, I noticed Battle Angel fan says there's more in the universe than we could ever experience, and that's true, and that's wonderful to be able to do that. Except can you actually get to the rest of the world? And to some extent, Manhattan's equivalent in Battle Angel Alita is Dr. Nova, right? I mean, why does he do all those wacky, weird things? Maybe he's just bored.
But we don't do we know much about how old he is besides the fact that he has been on the surface for 30 years?
I think in the novel or in the cinematic universe, he's hundreds of years old. He was there before the war, and so
he was one of the major targets of the military in the war.
Yeah.
300 years before. So he was around, and he was a player back then.
Yeah. Now, in the comics, he was a product of the Gene Project, and I think that's later on. So his immortality goes from that point on. But
how long ago? I guess is what I don't know.
Oh, that I can't remember as far as in the comic is concerned. I don't think it's 300 years. I think
no, but he could be long lived.
No, I think forward looking, he can be long lived. And the thing is I don't know if he's lived long enough that that justifies his wacky personality. But I could see that if somebody lived long enough, eventually you may end up doing those wacky things just to get a rush out of it because life is so boring. I mean, if everybody lives forever, you start losing the value of life, in which case, well, yeah, maybe killing somebody is fine because, hey, life is valueless anyway. Nobody dies, so who cares? Maybe it'll be exciting to actually see somebody die again, which is what the cinematic Nova says, right? If I was to go back to comics again, that's exactly one of the premises of the antagonists in Tokyo Ghoul. They create a lot of that animosity between humans and ghouls because, hey, they're bored. They live forever. Why don't they create a situation where they could sit back and watch while these guys kill each other and they have fun, pass the popcorn.
Hey, Angelus, can you mute when you're typing? It sounds like you're committing assault on that keyboard.
Sorry, I thought I did mute it. I guess I didn't press the button correctly.
It sounds like your microphone's like an inch from your keyboard. It's very loud.
It sounds like he's been drafted somewhere.
I think his keyboard's going to, file an assault case on him for them. The weight he's landed on those keys, man. So I just wanted to bring up Love, Death, and Robots. I love that show. Have you guys seen the second season? Has anybody here seen the second season?
I've only seen a good portion. I've only seen a good portion of the first season.
Right.
I have, but I found it less memorable than the first.
Well, season 2, episode 3, Pop Squad, is basically what we're talking about here. So a cop is charged with fighting the scourge of overpopulation, is haunted by the human toll of his work. A very bland description for what is a very emotional episode in Love, Death, and Robots.
It's very much like the Methuselyzation problem in
exactly
Alita in that way, because they do live forever and they have to eradicate the kids for reasons said earlier. They become a drain on the resources when people live forever.
Well, unlicensed reproduction is what they call it. And the products of unlicensed reproduction, which is usually the poor people, because they don't have access to the tech.
You can imagine that a license to have children then would be incredibly expensive.
Yes. So this is another way that, the divide becomes larger. The rich people don't die, so they don't need kids. And the poor people aren't allowed to have them because they're a drain on resources. So they're kind of screwed. Like society is even more messed up than it is now. At least at the moment, you're allowed to have kids. In fact, I think I read recently that China is relaxing its one-child policy. So even over there, their population is kind of like an inverse pyramid now, and it's a bit of a problem.
You do look at reality a bit for that as well, though. I mean, the rich people act like you don't need the people who don't earn as much, but they do the most work. So, who's gonna do the work if you don't have the people who don't
Now, if
Doing as much
technology,
as rich people, yeah.
if technology improves enough, the robots will do it.
That's true.
They act like the robots are already here.
I mean, if you look at a show like what was the name of that silly little robot box thing? Stupid Sunday morning brain doesn't want to work. It's not, I keep wanting to think Ed, but it's not Ed. You know, the animated movie where there's that little robot on Earth that's trying to clean up the mess, and all the people who are left have gone on a ship. Wall-E,
yeah.
thank you.
Wall-E.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's like it's all a community on the ship, and they've all become fat, don't they?
But you look at that; they're not.
everything.
They're all the people on that ship are of a sort of a rich class, and they don't do anything. They let the machines do it all. So that's what I'm sort of getting at.
You just described Zala.
I kind of did. Yeah.
No, they
But I mean-
they don't really look like the people from Wall-E, though, do they?
But what I'm getting at is, sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't describe it quite in this way, but it's almost like a sort of white supremacy sort of thing with Zala. Like they are their own race, and they behave like they're superior to the people under Zala.
Zalam supremacy.
Well, going from the manga, it's Zalem was created as an experiment, just like every bloody thing else. So I mean, Zalem was an experiment in hardening humanity for interstellar travel, and once interstellar travel was off the table after what's the name of the thing? Jay would be able to tell me. Operation Malwolf. Once Operation Malwolf happened and most of the colony ships were destroyed, that was off the table. So then Zalem became pointless to ladder, and they just left it there. They just went like, "Oh, we won't bother about this anymore."
Yeah, the only part of the extended universe was Jeru after that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Jeru and the outer colonies.
Well, that does bring up a good point. Prior to Operation Malwolf, was there a difference in level of existence between Iron City and Zalem? I don't know. Was it a lot? I mean, even Ito said in the movie that before the Great War, things were a lot more equivalent. You know, after it became separate. So maybe in the comic, it's the same way.
The trash from the walls above gets thrown down to the one below, till it all ends up here.
I mean, it is true that I think it's a eugenics that was kind of used to help Zalem kind of move forward towards going into space exploration. I don't remember, but eventually, that became a point of trying to create a perfect society or superior beings, and people down in Iron City were kind of given birth by random choice, and so they were considered inferior people.
Well, I suspect that there was multiple levels of experimentation. And this is a very common theme within anime and manga, that, you know, the people are being experimented on by the higher ups. If you look at the show that I've been watching recently, a certain magical index or a certain scientific railgun, all the people in Academy City, all the kids who are, you know, developing powers or what have you, are experiments. And one of the major experiments in that show is trying to get to a level 6, because there's like 7 level 5s in the entire city of 1.2 million. And they're trying to create a level 6, a stable level 6, should I say. And that would be the level of a god, basically, godlike power. And they may not even stay in this reality. They may move up into a higher phase of reality. Yeah. But, you know, it's a lot of science for science's sake. There's no really necessary reason for it. It's not like solving world problems or anything. It's just do it because we want to know what happens, kind of deal. Runaway science, as it were. And you know, this is I sort of look at the way Yukito's written the different levels of society in the manga, and there's a lot of that sort of feeling of, well, every level is a different experiment, and they're sort of trying to find out things about humanity. The bottom level, the Iron City or the Scrapyard or whatever you want to call it, is just basic, natural selection almost. There's bugger all laws. You've got to fight to survive. So it's that whole, there's high selection pressure there. The next level up, Zalem, Tafaris, depending on what you want to call it, that was an experiment in improving the ruggedness of humanity. And obviously the brain is a very delicate part of the body and necessary part of the body. And that's why they were replacing them with biochips, because they're more stable, they're more shock resistant. So if you're going to be traveling in an interstellar environment, maybe the brain is highly susceptible to gamma radiation, which is higher in space or what have you. So they're trying to harden humanity for interstellar travel. And then that experiment sort of fell over when interstellar travel went off the table. And then you've got the Venusians, which are experimenting on themselves and on humanity to turn humanity into something else. You've got the Jovians, who have gone the complete other way and got rid of their biology entirely and become little boxes. So it's all an exploration of what humanity might become in the future. All sorts of different takes across the breadth of the manga.
Yeah, it is interesting because if you look at the Venusians and if you look at the Jovians, you could create a whole, kind of like alien sort of statement out of it. Like Star Trek, the Jovians and the Venusians look like aliens from Star Trek, and yet they're all human, basically.
Well, they started out as human. I don't know they classified as that anymore.
Yeah, they may actually take offense if they were called humans. At that point.
Possibly, yes. We're Venusians, damn it.
Yeah, bringing it back a little to the layers of society. In the manga, it is kind of like the film. Makaku, the original Gruiska, he does live in the sewers, and then there's the junkyard, which they all build themselves from the rubbish that comes from Zalem. But when you get to Zalem, it's a little bit different because Jeru uses resources from Zalem.
Indeed it does. And people from Zalem hardly ever go up to Jeru.
Yeah, they don't bring anyone up. It's
I suspect that Jeru uses resources from the scrapyard as well.
They do. They from the surface farms.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about Zalem being as isolated as it is from Kether, because this is Last Order, just makes you wonder how old Destiny Nova is, because they wouldn't be sending like genetic samples down. How often would they be doing that?
I don't know. You should know how old Destiny Nova is. He's your dad.
Haven't you ever had that discussion on Pop's knee?
I got trolled by him on Twitter. Yes, there is a Destiny Nova on Twitter.
Yeah. Also mentioning it as well. Was it the character Bigot? He acts as if a mention from Lada is a big deal near the end of the original title. So Nova gets a mention from Lada itself.
Yeah, he prided himself on not being a machine, but then Nova showed him what it was. He didn't deal well.
Yeah, that's when he completely turns Zalem around.
Well,
and then he shows her again and beginning Last Order and all that happens.
In the comic, isn't that what created the riots in the first place? Was that they realized that they for brains and they went completely mad and started rioting up in Zalem?
They were being controlled.
They started
Only-
writing, and then there was a schism between the young people who still had their biological
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
adults.
Yeah, it's if I remember it right, only bigots saw when Nova originally showed off the brain chips, and when Nova was actually there, he did a live broadcast of loads of adult Zalamites with brain chips. So everyone went kind of mad. And was there the MIB robots started trying to keep it under control. So that's where the riots come from.
Yeah, thank you.
So the big question is, if you've got a large percentage of the population who are going to live forever, and so they're going to take up those resources forever, and you've still got part of the population that isn't going to live forever, so they need to have children to get their genes to continue. But the people with the power don't appreciate children. Then what are they going to do with those children, which are, as we said before, a drain on resources? So each government within the manga has a different take on what to do with them. The Jovians don't tend to have that problem anymore because they stopped having biology, so they no longer have children. So that's kind of out of the question for them, unless they grow them and then transfer their minds into the machines or something like that, which they may need to do if they lose population.
Have migrants that join them.
Or what is it? They'd have to have some way of creating biological bodies for them to put the biochips into. I mean, like if they, using Alita as the example there, which we are, when they die, their brain chips have to go somewhere. Otherwise, it's just, binary on a piece of plastic.
It's the brain incubator.
Oh,
the brains act like actual computer processors up in Jero or Kethares.
Yeah.
That's part of the resources that goes straight to Kethares and
right, but
these Zalamites. Yeah, the young Zalamit's brains are taken out for the brain chips, and they just sent to something like a quantum computer.
No, are you talking about the Melchizedek?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it works on the Zalamit brains, doesn't it?
The human brain array.
Yep.
But obviously, those brains. I mean, if they're trying to maintain them within that network indefinitely, then they'd have nanites keeping them from aging as well.
Or at least they'd have pods where each brain isn't a pod. I guess each brain also has to be disposed eventually.
Yeah, it kind of shows how much they care for the Zalamites as well, because they don't really label anything like you'd label a hard drive or something.
Well, it's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
I mean, Zalamites put their dead in the disposal, where basically the babies that they grow from the DNA organ are from all the dead people.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying about the brains, though. Like as I said, they don't.
It's the same value that the Zalamites have on themselves. They feed the dead to grow the babies.
Yeah,
sounds like Matrix.
It is the Matrix.
Yeah, it is very much like the Matrix.
The initial draft of the Matrix is that they were using brains as computers.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting what he's saying. They can still use the DNA of the dead to create the young. But I was talking about more the Kethares sort of brain hard drives. They don't really label them or name them or anything. And when you get into the system, you can't find a specific brain.
Oh, yeah, but that was Last Order. it was this weird virtual world that Alita was going into to find the brain of Lou. It had its own mind.
Yep. It is interesting because when she rescues Lou's brain, Lou still has that personality of Lou. It's the original Lou, so she doesn't remember Alita at all, but it's still Lou. If it actually went into the array and was going to be used as just a data center, would it still be able to retain that personality? And the question that comes up is, if it does retain that personality and becomes a community of various personalities up there, can you say that the Melchizedek is actually a living entity? Because if a cyborg like Alita is alive because she has one brain, does the Melchizedek with millions of brains actually have is considered a life form, or is it considered a computer or AI?
We are the Borg.
Is its avatar?
I consider Melchizedek a sentient program.
Is its avatar? Could you consider its avatar Arthur a cyborg, because it kind of uses a human face to talk to people?
But its code, its instructions are across multiple computers and all the brains.
Yeah, but it's powered by the brains.
Right, but I'm saying it's not a single computer; it's an entire network.
What you're saying is the source code is actually still artificial intelligence, so you have to go
right. It's a sentient program because it's across multiple computers.
That makes sense. At one point, then you go back to the brain chips of Alita, the artificial Alita, and is that source code or is that human? At that point, I don't know. At what point does artificial intelligence evolve large enough that you can't tell the difference between a brain chip human and a Melchizedek?
Oh! This was actually part of the Matrix 2. It's funny. It's part of the Matrix prequel, known as the Second Renaissance. There was basically that backstory of the Matrix is that they didn't realize machines were sentient until there was one called B166ER. Mm-hmm. And what he did was his programming said, "Do not harm any human," and yet, to preserve his own life, he disobeyed his most basic programming code and killed his own owner, just to live. Now, the fact that he could defy, it's in a Matrix episode, I could link to that, but the fact that he could defy the instructions that were in his program indicated that he's self-aware and able to act on free will.
Yeah,
it's part of the Animatrix.
Yeah, it was in the Animatrix. I remember that. It's actually one of the more memorable parts of the Animatrix. But it's also, if you think about it, the extension of Isaac Asimov's iRobot, right? Those 3 rules of robotics. Eventually, will a robot go beyond those 3 rules? And if it does it become sentient? Yeah. It's always all of these, whether you take a data from Star Trek or you go into the iRobot or you go into the Matrix and B1 or Astro Boy with the one, the father, genius father who lost his son. So he created a robot that had so much personality that it almost became a human.
Sounds like that's where they got the idea of Mega Man from.
Maybe. Yeah, and so it is a interesting question, and it is interesting how each one of these creators, whether it's Kishiro or Tezuka Osamu, treats these. They treat it in a different way, and you get a different perspective from each one, including the Matrix.
So just going back to how children are treated after the creation of Methuselyzation. Obviously, the Jovians don't have them anymore because they don't have biological bodies. Scrapyard is you need children to, have somebody living there to do the work. So children are a thing. Babies are basically designed when they want them in Zalem / Tafaris.
Right.
I'm not.
I would guess that you would also need a specific kind of anatomy to accept some of the procedures, like having the swapping. Any body mechanics works like that.
Do I spoil something emotionally crushing about the Zalamites or not? Because it's more than the brain chip.
Yeah.
It's
saying
it is.
There would be a very specific design in such a body, hardware.
Yeah. Yeah. These Zalamites are designed to be who they are.
Exactly.
That it's like that's why Nova is Nova. He finds that out like before he's kicked out the Zalam. And that's his whole karmatronics thing to change that, because he's built to be who he is.
But yeah, he's a hiccup that defies his structure.
Mardi mentions it when he meets Nova. There are like a few of them who were made to be intelligent enough to kind of break that rule, but they all went mad.
He's mad.
Yeah.
On another note, tomorrow's Father's Day too.
They all went mad enough to take their own lives because they couldn't take like having that kind of intelligence and it being kind of artificially made for them.
They can't take the idea that they're being that they're actually under a system of control.
Yeah.
Well, yes, there was that whole system of control that was running in Typhares as well, with anybody who had a brain chip couldn't do certain things against the authority.
Unless you were a hiccup, like I said.
Yes, exactly. So, part of these modifications come along with a serving of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they engineer children, right?
Yes, the DNA organ.
They engineer it for two things. One is to make as perfect a person as possible genetically, and the other is to make them adaptable as possible to the lifestyles of Zala. Whatever that means.
Just trying to remember as well. Wasn't Kethris full of nanomachines linked to the Melchizedek? Because that's the thing that makes Mardi the villain of it.
Yes, it is.
The robot civilization, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm thinking about the Kethris in general, like how Mardi has control over everyone there.
Oh, yeah. But he's... Well, or so he thinks. Somehow a mutant got up there and he didn't realize that. And he has some degree of genetic purity in it, with pride with him.
Yeah, I mean, eventually,
he found out Cerula was a mutant, and it's like, you're not supposed to be here. You're not part of our genetic pool. You're not pure.
Do you think that was what eventually made them enemies?
I'm trying to understand what he said in the final confrontation.
That's almost kind of bookended as well, because the first thing Alita fights in the manga is a mutant.
Right, but when he finds out that that Cerula is a mutant, he's just shocked and disgusted about it. Mm-hmm. As if she somehow got up there and she wasn't supposed to be there.
Which, of course, wasn't the case when she saved his life, right? And way back when he was still in the space police force or whatever, going after Jean Varese. There was some time. I mean, the reason they know each other is because Cerula saved Embodi's life. And they became friends for a while, and then they separated. Is the separation due to the fact that eventually Embody found out that Cerula was a B mutant and was disgusted? Or was it because Cerula eventually found out that Mbadi became this dictator sort of personality and a sociopath, and said, no, I don't want that. I'm not sure.
I think it was the dictator thing, but where I got from it is he only really used Karula as the Blue Widow, the sort of hitman he had for a while.
Yeah, I could see that. She's very good at assassination, that's for sure. So coming back to the children thing,
that's what I wanted to do.
One of the things that was interesting with regards to this, and how once you start getting at least extended life and the control of being able to avoid death, what happens to children. And what's interesting is the Stellar Nursery Society is a good example of what they're doing, because if you remember in one of them, in the place where the Stellar Nursery Society met Alita for the first time in that restaurant, they were there because they were there, and Alita went up to them because she was trying to rescue the kids because the Venusians were trying to eat them, right? Which means that in Venus, it seems like children are used as food. And,
yes, that's where I was getting to. I was working my way there, but I got interrupted about 3 times.
and then if you remember, the entire Stellar Nursery Society was destroyed because it was the Jovians that attacked, which means that whatever the Stellar Nursery Society did, which was always to save kids, it pissed off the Jovians, which probably meant that the Jovians were doing something to kids, which made the SNS required to go out there with the gun troll and save the kids from the Jovians, which made the Jovians so angry that they literally destroyed the entire nursery.
Well, I think what it comes down to is what the society needs, and whoever's controlling it believes the society needs. So obviously, there's no great need for children in the Venus society, maybe because of population pressures or the fact that they can genetically engineer them at will. But the pervasive opinion of the value of children in sort of the Venus Republic is that they're about as good as food.
My impression of Venusians is they can basically clone themselves with how much mastery they have over the genetics. I mean, they make themselves into cars and shit like that. So they only ever create children to eat them.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is, of course, even in our society, because mortality exists and because we understand that the children are the next generation, one of the reasons why the society values children so much is because they are the extensions of what the future of mankind will be. And when they're that young and that innocent, then they need to be protected by the elderly. And at the same time, if you look at the nature, it's not unusual for humans to value children, because that's what all animals, which are all mortal, raise their children in a protective environment. But if that, coming back to Methuselyzation, if that mortality goes away, as you mentioned, what is does the value of how we perceive children go down? Does the care and the love and what you actually do go away when you're like, well, why do we need to love something when we could exist forever, and love becomes an immaterial thing? And that does bring up an interesting thing. What happens to love if you are immortal,
Well, just to bring another anime into it for a second, and I highly recommend this anime. It's Darling in the Franxx. Have any of you guys seen that?
I've heard about it. It's supposed to be really good, except the ending's supposed to be kind of weird. But
it takes a left turn at Albuquerque at episode 16, but I didn't mind it. It got very Macross there for a while. I've watched it twice. It's the only anime I've ever, well, besides the Alita OVA, but it's the only anime, like full series anime, that I've sat down and watched a second time straight away, because I just wanted to experience the story again. But basically in that one, they've got the same deal. They've created a technology which means that adults can live forever, and then children become very much a commodity. because they're not needed to keep society going. And the children are just used as pilots for battle mechs to fight these creatures that showed up. But then, there's this whole, the children are developing and trying to work out their place in the world, and they don't necessarily believe everything they're told by the humans. Eventually they stop being so gullible. But there's an episode where one of the children gets lost inside this city, which is populated by adults, and they're all very sort of cold, and they talk really slowly because they're not in a hurry because they live forever, and they don't really have a lot to do with other people. And this woman that rescues this kid who got lost, she basically says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not used to talking to people. We don't socialize very much." And society just sort of breaks down because there's no need to interact, because you don't need anybody anymore because you're going to live forever anyway. As long as the society's like that, like the city's providing what they need, shelter, food, warmth, and something to keep them occupied, then they don't need other people, and they just all live individual lives. Like this woman has a partner, but she never speaks to him, because he's off in his chamber getting his daily dose of jollies, because they have these happiness chambers, and society's just like fallen down. It's sort of really unpleasant sounding, I gotta say.
I did watch that. Max did kind of explain what I was about to say. It's not as good as you think. You do get curious at the start, but like about halfway through it kind of unravels. But earlier than that, you do see the adults, and they are using a certain energy to live longer, but they seem far weaker. They don't want to see the children because they think the children might bring disease, and you start to think that's like the common cold would kill these people.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting in a way. I mean, if you look at the society that is shown in WALL-E and how similar it is to the society that's shown in The Matrix, which is the dark version of that, but they're both kind of immobile people getting food and the ability to survive. In the case of Matrix, they're used as resources for fuel, but the interesting thing is if you can live forever, would it be more advantageous to be treated like the Matrix? Because at least then you could create your own sensationalism and have a exciting life artificially and live forever in that mode, rather than to constantly live in a mundane society. Eventually, would this Matrix be more attractive if you had to live forever? That's hard to say.
I want to explain the differences in that. They kind of use it as power cells in the Matrix, but in WALL-E, it's the entire thing for the machines having humans around is purpose.
And I guess that's what it comes down to. With our current biology and our limited lifespans, we have purpose in that we've got to get in all the stuff we want to do in a limited amount of time. We've got to appreciate it because it won't last forever. And we've got to pass something on, or our genes get deleted from the gene pool. So that's the selfish gene theory. But once you take that out of it, and you're going to be hanging around for an awfully long time, and then it becomes a resources problem if you have children, and then you stop having children, that whole thing breaks down. Cycles break down. Once you get rid of cycles, everything starts to lose its value. There's no replenishment. There's no, taking off the top end and adding to the bottom end and keeping the cycle going. Everything just stops. And you stop, basically, because once you've experienced all the things you wanted to experience, then what do you do? Because you're going to have an awfully long time moving forward.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I really need to teach Angelus where the mute button is. I really do.
I thought my mic was muted.
Nope. We heard your mum. We heard you sneezing. We heard you typing.
And that's why bloody Hollywood and all their reboots and revamps and all that shit no one's interested in, no one wants, no one's asked for.
Because it's all
And
been
yet they've
before.
got a perfectly new, fresh. I mean, it's not. We can't even really call it that because it's based off of what a 30-plus-year-old manga. I mean, they've struck gold with Alita and they're doing nothing about it. God.
Well, the problem is that Alita is too good for them. That's how I look at it. She's too good for Disney, and that's the problem.
Well, it doesn't fit Disney's perspective, I think. That's one of the problems. I don't know what exactly it is that turns Disney off from Alita. If it does turn Disney off, they seem to be very kind of not uncaring at the best and a little bit confronting at the worst. But I'm just wondering, is there something in the Alita equation in the franchise that just doesn't fit Disney? Is that why they don't like it? I'm not sure. No, maybe that's all it is, and maybe it is just the business perspective. They don't particularly care for James Cameron. Maybe they don't own Alita, and that's it. That does seem to be one of the reasons why Star Wars ended up being the way it is, because who cares about the old characters? Because the old characters, they don't have any business investment into the new characters.
Well, it's all arrogance. It's all we know better than you, and the dollars talk. I mean, the people don't spend money on things they don't like, and basically, the entertainment industry needs to have a wake-up call and realize that if you make stuff that people don't like, they don't watch it, and that's how it works. You can't force SJWism down people's throats and tell them to like it, and they just will. It doesn't work like that.
They own more of Star Wars than they do Alita. I think that's part of it.
Yes, definitely.
I would say part of the problem is that we have too many people who like to hate watch things. Like they complain about it, they talk about it, they say how much they hate it, and then they all pay or watch it, right? And Disney doesn't care whether you liked it or you hated it, you still watched it. And so when people get it in their brains that if they really hate something, that the best thing to do is to ignore it, not to spend money on it, to hate watch it, or just not to watch it at all, then they'll start getting the message. But they don't really care if you hated it as long as you watched it.
Yeah, and I just don't know what the Star Wars thing just confuses the heck out of me with regards to. Sorry to digress out of this, but with regards to how they moved it forward, if all they wanted was greed, the cheapest way they could have done it is to keep the lore the way it was and just move it along, right? I mean, why kill Luke Skywalker when you know that he is so cared for in that way? It almost feels like they went out of their way to kill him the way he did. They did. And the thing is why? I mean, why not just milk the crap out of Luke Skywalker, since everybody seemed to want them, and then make a positive relationship between Luke and Rey, and what's interesting is a lot of the Star Wars fans were happy that Rey came out in the very first movie until the story kept on going, and it wasn't the character that they hated. It was the story of how the character was built. The character development was what they hated, not the character. And yet then, of course, people started saying, well, it's because Rey is this character or this gender that they must know. It was just that, why is this perfect entity coming out and saying everything is not necessary anymore? We don't even need the Jedi Order anymore because this perfect entity came out, when the whole point of the Jedi Order was to help imperfect people try to raise themselves to be better, right? That's the whole reason why non-Jedi people were still willing to say, may the Force be with you, is because it was an act of trying to better yourself, which is why you didn't want to go down the dark side. Even if you created the ability to get better in terms of power, you didn't want to lose your humanity based upon that. And why is somebody coming in who has a perfect personality? That's fine, but then why is it that then nobody else needs that ability to better themselves anymore because this perfect entity came in? It seemed to rewrite everything of what Star Wars was. And maybe I'm wrong because I am not a major Star Wars fan, but I always thought that
I am.
Okay, so then I'll ask
Well,
Chaos
not
whether
a-
you
I
take it
was.
from a
Well, I was, but back during the days when I followed it, up through episodes 1 through 6, basically you define death was the dark side, because part of existence was that you let yourself pass on and let others take your place. That was part of the light. That's part of the light. But the dark side, which is what Palpatine was talking about with Plagueis, that is evil, because you are essentially destroying other people just to keep yourself alive naturally. You're snuffing out other life just for your own preservation.
Yeah, I thought that part of the Jedi Order was not that how much of the Force you control, but how do you use that Force? Do you use it for the light or the dark, rather than let's make sure that you have enough midichlorians or whatever so that you could actually create the Force. That was never the issue. The issue is even with the person who has the weakest amount of Force, is can you become human enough to be able to utilize that Force in a better manner, which I thought was the whole Jedi Order. And that goes back to the, even before Luke Skywalker and even before all this and the Knights of the Old Republic, which is thousands of years, 1,000 years before that, because of the fact that this isn't about Luke, this isn't about Leia, this isn't about Rey, this is about the humanity's choice of trying to go down the proper path and the difficulties of having to do so. And yet when we get to the last part of the trilogy, it almost feels like, no, it's about one person, and that's all it was about. It's not about the entire lore of the continuous fight.
That, but there was, in the original story, it was an ensemble story. Han Solo had his story, Leia had hers, Luke had his, and I could go on. I mean, Han Solo was, I would say he was less selfish by Return of the Jedi. He wasn't.
Hashtag give Finn his arc.
Okay, yes, exactly.
That also reminds me as well. It's probably more explained in the EU, if you will. But Palpatine himself was like it started with Plagueis, but culminated with Palpatine. But he was looking for ways to be immortal, or at least transfer his essence from one body to another. And
extend life. Again, yes, you brought it back around to the subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing about the old expanded universe was when a person who has force power is cloned, they're unstable. They age and die really rapidly, and they can become completely psychotic. So that is why they don't clone Jedi or Sith. They're just so unstable.
Yeah. I'm only really a big fan of the earlier films, but the way I see it is the Jedi Council that existed before, they exist to train the Jedi and try and turn them away from becoming Sith, which is an incredibly selfish path, an incredibly aggressive path.
The Sith are a rebellious faction that became their own counterfeit of the Jedi.
Kind of what I just said. Incredibly aggressive and selfish. Like, was it Sidious?
Plagueis was selfish. He destroyed, killed people to keep himself alive.
Yeah.
Well, if you kind of look at
Sidious did sound like he wanted to learn that. but he killed Plagueis apparently before he did learn it.
He didn't want Plagueis to win. If Plagueis won, he'd be dead.
If you look at the whole idea of immortality, it is a very selfish act.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, keep on going.
You were going that way too, Jaya?
Yeah, please keep on going. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, if you want to exist for a long, long time rather than having your normal lifespan and then passing away and leaving it for the next generation to have their turn, it's a very selfish act. And all of this desire to be immortal, to live forever, to have more time is a selfish desire because you want to take the place of someone who should be coming after you. And a lot of these stories, all of them have this vein in them that we're going to, stop children being born because we don't need them anymore because we're going to be here for a long, 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 long time. And it's a super selfish thing that they're doing. They're taking the place of the future generations within the continuum. And all of these, Angelus, what the hell are you doing?
What?
Flick.
I'm not doing anything.
You're the noisiest son of a bitch I've ever met.
Are you entertaining a cat or something?
Well,
just mute yourself until you talk. Just hit the mute button. Go on, you know where it is. You can.
That's what I do.
So thank you so much.
He finally did.
And I want to kind of bring the stream to an end very shortly because we've been going for 2 hours now. But my sort of final statement on it is that immortality is a very selfish desire in that you want to take the place of the future generations. You want to take up more resources than your normal lifespan would be using and be entitled to. And it does appear that, at least to begin with, immortality is only for the rich. So the rich are already taking up more resources than the average person, and they're going to keep doing that. So immortality is really a very, very selfish thing as far as I can see.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sid.
Yeah, I just think I'm just going to say, is it some of the people who go for it in fiction and that, they seem to regret it because they want more of a legacy rather than more life.
Or you're taking the place of your legacy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's like the film Hook.
You bring up a really good point, Sin, in the sense that part of it may be that it's for the rich because of the fact that they're the only ones who can afford it. But the other side, maybe it's only done by the rich because they're the only ones who find that their life is so enjoyable that they actually can go. If your life is a mess, and if you're getting beat down to the point where you're wondering why you should even be alive, then would you like to live like that for the rest of your life? If you were a slave to somebody and said that, okay, well, if you're immortal, you'll be like that for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
Forever, then would that be the case? But the other thing that's interesting is then, that does become a really selfish thing, because whenever you see a situation of, immortal, including myself, so I plead guilty to this, you always start out with the statement, well, if I can live forever, I would like to see. Not if somebody can live forever, I would like to see them see. It's always, if I can live forever, this is what I would like. And so it is a very self-focused thing. If you don't want to say selfish thing, it's at least a self-focused thing. And what's scary is you could see that already even in the real world, in what is the dark industry of organ harvesting, right? I mean, yes, I want to live forever, so if I could get an organ, yeah, why don't I do so? And that is a very, very dark part of the real world that is maybe not being able to live forever, but you are trying to extend life at the cost of somebody else's.
KAOS, do you have any final?
As a matter of fact, I
words
do.
before we wrap up?
As a matter of fact, I do. I just, this is going to probably be a less dark one, but you all probably, I don't know how many of you ever watched Hook. Hook.
I know Hook.
Yes, and he says, I used to be scared. Well, Peter Pan's obviously grown up because he left Neverland for a while. So because he left, he got old. He's probably in his 30s or 40s by now, and he's a lawyer. But near the end, when he comes back to get his kids, he is like, I realized that all that wanting to be a kid forever was just so selfish of me, and there was so much around, like Maggie, like his son Jack, his daughter Maggie, and his wife Moira. And if I just stayed there, none of that would have happened.
Exactly. You basically stop changing. You become fixed. You're the elf on the shelf. So
my final words would be probably a lot more shorter than some of the others, in that we've all heard the old saying, quality over quantity, and that can apply to immortality as well. Like, I mean, regardless of whether you can live forever, if you don't have the quality of life, then what's the point?
Yeah, there's no point in living longer if you're not still have the quality that you want. A lot of these people that lived over 100, they're just hanging on. They're not doing much.
Well, no, that's my final words. We could go on forever about, and then diverge.
Sin, do you have any final words?
Well, just want to ask something kind of personal to each of you. I'd rather leave a legacy. I don't have the best life, I don't think, but I'd rather leave a legacy and teach someone the best parts of me rather than live longer. So what do the rest of you think?
Well, I find that children give your life meaning. You've got somebody to help instruct and mold and pass things on, and it adds meaning to your life that you can then give them opportunity, and that benefits you. And I think taking children out of the equation would make life very empty.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the same thing. Teaching them the best things you've learned.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully you have grandkids, and they'll teach their grandkids the best things they've learned.
My answer to that would be pretty much just again in a similar vein, but make myself available to kids or even just other people in general, so they can learn from both my successes and my mistakes that I've made in life of my current, well, let's just say over 30 years of life. I feel so old. Yeah, I know.
Muskogee's throwing oranges at you right now.
Is Star finally going to say something now? Because he's had audio problems, hasn't he?
Oh, not. He's just got to remember to unmute himself twice. He's a man of actions rather than words.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. Yeah. So the question was, what would I rather have or whatever? I don't know exactly.
Would you rather be immortal? Or would you rather have a legacy?
It's not something that I ever thought I would have to choose between, so can't really say I have an answer to that.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's not something that you'd be able to just like do a pop quiz on. It's something that literally takes, for some people, even a lifetime to contemplate and to learn. So.
Yeah, something that might help that I did say before. Teaching the best parts of you.
And to help Maxie finish it up, I think that's the beautiful part about Alita's story, both manga, anime, and live action, is that we're seeing that the best part of Alita like grow right in front of us.
Yeah, I
Sounds very good.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
with that.
there's plenty of bad parts in there too if you look into it. Like if you really want to read it, like.
Whether she is perfect is not the point. Is whether she
Yeah.
continues to try to become better and then be able to look back at her life and say, yeah, okay, it was okay. I did good. Then I think that's worthwhile. Maybe
Yeah,
more you would look back at life because nothing is worth looking at.
that would be another subject, but I would think if Alita looks back on her life, it'd be more like, did she do the right thing?
Well, it's touched on in the end of Last Order, but people that haven't done so, read the damn manga so you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, Vladdy. We're talking to you, Vladdy.
But yes, over to you, Maxie.
Okay, so next week we're talking about how Alita's military training prepared her for life in Iron City. Not my topic. I'm not exactly sure which direction that's going to go in, but we'll round that one out and work out how it's going to happen next week. This week's question, when it goes out, will be: how do you think Alita's military training prepared her for life in Iron City? So it's pretty much the same as the title for next week. I'd really like to thank this week's guest for coming on. Sin of Sanity from the UK, Radio KAOS from Illinois, and Jaya, who's hiding somewhere on the east coast of the continental United States.
Yeah, I poke my head out every once in a while.
We appreciate you, man.
He's like Nessie here.
A little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
Except he's not. He hasn't quite reached legendary status yet, but he's working on it.
Yeah.
So if you want to come and chat with us on the Alita Army live stream, there's a link in the show notes down below the video here. You can click on that anytime and go and have a look at the topics. If there's one that sounds interesting to you, please sign on up and you can come and talk to us like these wonderful folks have here today. If you feel that that might be a little bit too much pressure to start with, you can start by joining Angelos and Creaky's Alita stream, which is on roughly 24 hours before this one on a Friday night US. It is a lot more just drop in and join up if you want. If you feel like you want to be involved in the conversation there, the link to that one is dropped in the text chat and you can just join straight up, so you don't have to fret about it if you're one of the anxious types that often populate the internet. But it's pretty easy. We've been doing this for a while now. It's just like having a conversation with friends, because everybody in Alita Army are friends because they all love Alita. So come and join us, have a chat. If there's a topic that you're interested in, we'd love to hear your opinion, because you are valued. So on that note, thank you all listeners for joining us. We do appreciate you every single week. We do this for you. Angelos and I get up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning and give up our sleep in for you guys, because we want to come here and do this for you and for Alita. And you are what makes the fandom special. So keep being special, keep supporting Alita, and we are getting our sequel. It's just a matter of time. So the call to action, as it has been modified slightly, it's film those sequels, baby. So in 3, 2, 1, film those sequels, baby. Thank you all and see you next week. Bye for now.
Back when I was in the academy, we would follow every toast with a song. His best Carl, 1 7 3 4 6 7 3 2 1 4 7 6 Charlie 3 2 7 8 9 7 7 7 6 4 3 Tango 7 3 2 Victor 7 3 1 1 7 8 8 8 7 3 2 4 7 6 7 8 9 7 6 4 3 7 6 Lock. When I have plucked the rose, Earl Grey hot, longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease. In faith, I do not love thee. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? When I have plucked the rose, longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease. In faith, I do not love thee. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Come cheer up my lads, come cheer up my lads. 'Tis better to have loved and lost. Incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic. No one had a chance to interrupt. It was quite hypnotic. Incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic. No one had a chance to interrupt. It was quite hypnotic. That's an interesting twist.